Hey everybody, how you doing? Today we're going to talk about how to read trout water. And this is a topic that comes up a lot. I know when I first transitioned to fishing trout in rivers, I found it very hard to identify where the fish were. I was accustomed to lakes and ponds, and I wasn't really sure, where to read the current and how to go about starting, especially with fly fishing. But really, this goes for just about any technique in any species in a river environment. So in most trout streams, what we're going to see is a configuration of riffles, runs, and pools. And in this clip, we have a riffle. We'll talk about runs and pools in a little bit. So riffles can be very easy to spot trout if you know what to look for. There's fast current, so there's lots of things breaking that current up. And so if we're scanning here, if we walk up to the bank and this is what we see, we're going to want to look for the areas in rocks, this case, that are going to break the current up. So as we scan here, see the water moving, boom. Okay, so right here, this is kind of where I saw there's a rock, and then you can see the foam moving to the left and the right of the rock. And so there's this old saying called follow the foam. And the foam is what's going to show you where the current is moving, and it's going to highlight the seams between faster and slower water, aka where the trout or other fish are going to hold. And so right here you can see that this patch is slower moving. It's kind of a slick surface, and you got the faster moving water on either side. So there could very easily be a trout sitting right here. And when you're fishing, you're going to want to try a lot of these because not every single spot is going to have a fish, but it's about identifying the spots that you think have the best chance of holding fish. And if we keep moving here, so right up here, I want to identify this little string right here. And as you can see, there's a transition, and this is the big thing you want to look for, a transition between slow water and fast water, because that is where the fish are going to hold. And now you might say, okay, well, I get that there's a transition here, but the slow water comes before the fast water. So doesn't that mean that the current is moving pretty fast here? And that's true, there is current here, but one thing that people often mistake when they're looking at trout lives is the fact that there are calm patches of water on the upstream side of the rock. There's this phenomenon where the water flows in, and as it goes up over the rock, it creates a little pocket of calm water at the base of the rock. And so a lot of times you'll see fish holding right in there, and that can be a really good spot because a lot of people don't target that spot, and they'll miss fish as a result of that. So as we look at this here, we have a big seam right here, and so you might want to throw a fly or a spinner if you're using those right along the edge here, and try and see if there's any fish that are hiding in that little pocket ahead of that rock. And so we keep going. Right over here, you see some overhanging branches. Okay, overhanging branches are always a good indicator that there could be some fish lying in wait. And right here, it's hard to see, but we see we have a little bit of a seam. It looks like there's an obstruction to current. So right here, depending on the depth of the water, there could be something holding because you have grasshoppers or different insects that fall from the tree. And a lot of times there will be a trout lying in wait to get them. So in the next clip, we have a run, and this is, as you can probably tell, a different river. And I'm trying to do this so that a lot of rivers look very different from each other, and so I'm trying to get something that looks at least somewhat similar to what you guys will find at your home river or wherever you're doing your fishing. So this is a run. A run is a slightly deeper version of a riffle, and so it's got pretty swift current still, but it's not quite as rapid as riffles, and they also have a little bit more depth to them. And you can find a lot of fish that are relatively active feeding in runs because there are still generally some obstructions there that break the current up, and the current is still moving pretty quickly so that they can get food delivered right to their mouths. So in this one, there's really only one obvious structure to me, and that's these overhanging branches. A lot of times, and there actually may be what's called an undercut bank, which is when the current digs out the soil on the bank, and it can create a hole under the bank, probably 2 to 3 feet deep, even deeper sometimes, and that creates a lot of shade that trout crave, especially during the daylight hours, high sun, and it also provides protection. Aerial predators can't get in here. And it also provides a feeding source. You have whether or not this is an undercut bank, there's still going to be this long stuff up on top, and that is where insects, grasshoppers, different things can fall from that tree, fall right in the water, and more often than not, there's something hungry down here waiting for them to fall in. And when you're fishing these can be a little tough, especially this one. If I walked up on a bank, this would be kind of tough because, if you're fly fishing, you've got to be really precise, trying to get, if you're using a dry fly, you really don't want to get snagged up here. Same goes for nymphs, and streamers can be tough here because, if you're retrieving them, they won't be in the feeding zone very long. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't try them, because a lot of times places that are really gnarly looking like this are where the biggest trout in the stream hold. Those are called prime lies, and prime lies are the places where as soon as you see them when you walk up to that bank, you need to be casting in there. And if you lose a fly, if you lose a lure, it's not the end of the world. I'm assuming that you want to catch big fish, and if you want to catch big fish, you're going to have to sometimes risk a little bit of tackle in the process. And so if you lose a fly here, so be it, but you also may catch the biggest trout of your life, because prime lies are where the big ones hide. So we talked about riffles, we talked about runs, now we're going to talk about pools. And as you can see, this is a different clip, different stream entirely than the previous two, but I'm doing this intentionally because you got to be able to find the same types of structure and cover for these fish regardless of the body of water, because there's a lot of differences between different places you're going to fish. So here's a pool. It's one of my favorite types of pools called a waterfall pool. That waterfall over time has dug out the sediment here at the base to the point where it's a deep like crater where that water pools up literally. So the water is moving slowly, and it resembles a lot of times, especially in bigger rivers, still water like a pond or a lake. And in those areas, generally the same principles apply. You want to find a big rock or a downed branch or some form of cover in that deeper water where those fish can hold. A lot of times pools, and especially in bigger rivers, are going to be where the more inactive trout hold, but it's also where the biggest trout often hold. And so, you might sacrifice a little bit of trout activity, but if you feel that you can convert those fish, which oftentimes you can, it's definitely worth a shot. And there's also fish that aren't inactive in a pool, so it's never worth passing up an opportunity like that. And in small mountain streams like this might be the only place that those fish are holding, because as you can see up here, that white water is really shallow, probably not very hospitable to a fish living there. So when you see a small mountain stream like this, it can be really fun because those fish will stack right up in the pools, and a lot of times the biggest fish in the entire stream will be holding in a prime lie like this, because you have this white water coming in. If you follow the foam, you'll see that the insects, whatever it is that's flowing in the current, is going to come right to their doorstep down here, and they have still water where they can rest and they can dart up and grab it. And so that is where most people fish in a pool. But another kind of neglected area in pools is what's called the tail out. And it's kind of hard to see in this video here, but the stream flows this way and the pool ends and it kind of transitions, and the tail out usually goes from pool to riffle. And the riffle, there's a lot of over time the stream forms, and I'm not going to get into all of that, but basically a riffle usually follows a pool, and that pool, which has slower moving water, transitions to faster moving water. So are we seeing a trend? That transition between slow and fast is another place where fish can stack up, because they have the slow water on this side, and as the current starts to pick up, it's going to funnel all of the food, all of the stuff that's fallen in or is swimming around in this pool, and it's going to funnel it all to the tail out. And so those fish can stack up right there and they can feed, and a lot of people neglect that type of spot. So definitely worth a try, especially in a small little mountain stream like this. So just to illustrate what you'll see from the underwater perspective of a trout stream, here I'm going to show you some salmon. This looks like a par or a juvenile salmon, and then there's another salmon that comes in the video, but you'll see how the current has been broken up You can even see the eddies up on the surface. We didn't talk about that much, but basically the eddies, the swirling water, indicates that there's something beneath the surface that is breaking the current up. And you definitely want to, if you see eddies, you want to fish that area, because that will indicate that there's something under the surface that is breaking the water. So right here we have a branch. I'll play the clip. You guys can see how, this big old salmon is sitting in here. The water is probably moving more slowly right in here. Scares off the little guy, but you can see he's holding in here, and this water on this side is moving much faster. And so there's still some current here, but it's much slower than over here, and he's holding on this, which I can't see it, neither can you, but it's probably a pretty good lie. Okay, so we've talked about riffles, runs, and pools. I'm going to wrap this video up really quick, but what I want to show you is the whole configuration of the stream. I broke it into parts, but now from this aerial view, I don't mind all the people swimming, but you can see the riffle and where it transitions to a run right in here, and then it transitions to a pool. Let me move this out of the way so you can see it. All right, and so as I play it, you can see the water's moving fast up here, and it kind of slows down a little bit, gets deeper, and then it gets even deeper to the point where it almost looks still. And so, take a look at this video, play it back if you want. See if you can find some areas where you would see fish. I can see some seams already. I'm not going to point them out. I'll let you guys do that, or maybe I'll point them out. Here's a seam right up here. Right along this rock will break the current up. Right along this rock, there's a seam. But keep doing it. Take a look. The more footage you see and the more real-life streams you see, the better you'll get at identifying these spots. So I encourage you, get out there, look up videos on YouTube of just rivers, and find the different lies where, if you were fishing that river, where you would fish. And that's a great way to practice these techniques, so you can locate more fish and catch more fish.